Hi, welcome back to The Sacred Plant. My name is John Malanki, your host, advocate, and co-creator, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, John Easterling, Mr. John Easterling. And as you may recall, John has been exploring the Amazon rainforest since the 1970s, and it was there that he was introduced to the traditional use of medicinal plants by the indigenous people of Peru. Amazon John, as many know him, has decades of plant-based medicine experience, has been profiled on TV as well as radio, including Good Morning America, Fox and Friends, and of course my favorite, season 2 of the Sacred Plant docuseries, Healing Secrets Examined. So welcome, John. Anything else you want to add to that introduction?
No, thank you, John. You did a very generous introduction for me. I appreciate it and really glad to be with you again.
Well, good. So for our listeners who have watched us on the Sacred Plant and have seen your interview, thank you. Your interview with your wife has gone like wildfire, and I've had a lot of people have contacted us about your story, about Olivia's story, and that you're both helping people. So thank you so much for that. So you've been working exploring the Amazon for over 40 years now. Now, you talked about that in our series. And so what is it about the Amazon that keeps you coming back for I guess, medicinal research and education and helping people?
1970s, looking for lost cities of gold and Inca treasure, and got into a lot of pre-Columbian artifacts and then some jungle things, and getting upriver in the Amazon basin and working with Shipibo, Ashwar, Machiginga Indians with blowguns and tribal artifacts. I had a specific health issue. I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever and hepatitis, and I had a near-death experience with that at a hospital in North Carolina that left me in a somewhat compromised position of health. So my energy level wasn't where it used to be. I was operating at about 60% of capacity, and this is how I was exploring in the Amazon. The doctors told me, "You're lucky to be alive, and just be grateful for that." And I accepted that at the time. And occasionally I get these low-grade fevers and would just go down for 2 or 3 days. And that was happening in the rainforest. And some of the indigenous people brought me Amazonian botanicals. And Uña de Gato, Sangre de Drago, and Chancapiedra. And I started doing these. In just a matter of days, I felt a sense of groundedness come back again. I felt the mental acuity went back to where it used to be. And I realized that I was as good as I was before I was sick. And after another week, I realized I'd gone to like a new place of health and life experience. And it just rang to me that all those years I've been going down looking for treasure, I was actually chopping down this stuff. And then the recognition was there that, hey, this is the real treasure of the Amazon. These thousands and thousands of species of medicine. I mean, it's a long answer. Your original question, what keeps me going back? It's all about the treasure. And now it's all about the medicinal treasure that's growing in the rainforest, the therapeutic value of that we want to bring back and share with the rest of humanity. Because, when you think about it, medicinal plants, the Amazon is the source of that. That is our planet's largest force of life energy, 100,000 species of plants that we've really only looked at therapeutically about a tiny 3%. And yet from that tiny 3% come almost a fourth of the pharmaceuticals.
It's amazing. And you broke up a little bit here and there when you were speaking. So you went down there to look for treasures. You became ill. The indigenous people took you in and shared what they've, shared with what they've helped their ancestors for thousands of years by giving these herbs, and they use that on you. Did I catch that correctly? Because we were a little jarbled for a bit.
You caught that exactly correctly. And, the most extraordinary thing to me was that their knowledge of medicinal and therapeutic, I mean, they didn't have my charts or my history or anything like that. They just looked at me and saw me lying there weak and sweating, and went out and collected pretty specific botanicals, Sangre de Drago, Uña de Gato, Chancapiedra, and it made a huge difference in my life. And so later, just the way we're built, you want to know, well, maybe why did that happen? So I start looking at the research on those specific plants and in the inner bark of this vine that stimulate macrophage phagocytosis effect, essentially kickstarting immune system. I realized, wow, that was important. How did they know I needed that word? Piedra, of course, being stone, Shanka means to shatter. So the name of the plant actually translates to stone breaker. And so when you break down those stones that reside in like in the liver, in the ducts of the liver or in the kidney, you get more efficient liver. And also virus will tend to colonize around those, that calculi, that extra stone. So getting rid of that virus and improving circulation and flow through the liver and gallbladder and kidneys. I mean, how did they know that was exactly what I needed, right, with the hepatitis?
Yeah.
And now, Phlanthus neuriae or Shanka Pater has been shown to have antiviral effects as well. So it's just extraordinary what we have access to right now.
Yeah, it is. Plant medicine is so important. And before we started filming, we spoke about Montana and cattle and branding and everything else like that. So our neighbors in Montana, there's a blue weed that grows wild up there, and it's beautiful, but it's also poisonous for cattle. So they have to go up there and literally hand pick, and it has little barbs on it, and so you're getting stuck and poked and prodded by these little thorns on there. So my neighbor, who is the real cowboy, I only just play one when I go visit. He has arthritic hands, but he gets punctured by these little thorns, and he said, "John, my swelling goes down. I can move my hands." And so we have some of these indigenous plants here that I'm certain that we haven't even. I'm certain the Native Americans have used them for years, and we're just removing them for to save cattle. So with you down in the Amazon, I know there are a bunch of pharmaceutical companies that are sending researchers down to look for new medicines. What are they doing differently than you going down there and exploring this?
That's a fabulous question. I'm so glad you asked that, John. But yeah, every pharmaceutical company in the world is stumbling around in the Amazon, just as every fisherman is trying to go to where this is the source of this very complex chemistry, nutrition factor, energetic factors. And so they're looking at some of the traditional uses of use of plants. And then, like I say, almost a quarter of the world's pharmaceuticals come from the original footprint of plants. And of course, their methodology is to create an isolate, a patentable isolate. I mean, that's their business model, to put through a drug distribution format. And this is something I think people should really know, because people ask me all the time, hey, if that plant's so good, why isn't it a drug? Well, in some cases, it is a drug. In other cases, it isn't. When we look at something like a Sangre de Drago, for example, Croton lecheri, it's a fast-growing tree in the Amazon. You hit it with a machete, and it bleeds this sap that looks just like blood. So traditionally, it's been used to heal wounds. It stimulates the migration of fibroblast cells, which is the healing cells in the skin, so it's wonderful for skin. And then we see by dry weight that sap is 90% pure proanthocyanins, so it's an extraordinary antioxidant. And then it was also discovered that, hey, this is very, very antiviral, and in particular with the herpes virus. So now you're talking about an application that may be good for 1 out of 6 people who's carrying a herpes simplex virus of some sort. So this is a really huge target for drug companies. Drug companies got involved in looking at Sangre de Drago to actually make a drug out of, because they saw what it did as a sap, so powerfully antiviral. It worked as a sap, but they don't sell sap. So they break it down into the active constituents and do some isolates. And the more they do that, the more toxic it becomes, or the less therapeutic it becomes. And they went through about $5 million, and they added another 10 million because they see what the sap does. How can we break that down and find the active constituent, turn that into a drug for herpes? and it ultimately went through $30 million and could not do it. So it was a case where almost the plant kingdom is protecting itself from that method of distribution. Now, they don't sell sap, so they put it aside, not because it doesn't work, because it doesn't fit their model of business. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but the good side of that certainly is they did a wonderful research to show how wonderful the sap is. And the good news is, at that time, we were selling sap, and that sap is available now, Sangre de Drago, just as the sap. Now, of course, in the dietary supplement industry, we can't say it cures herpes or anything like that. We can just say it facilitates your body's natural ability to create a balance in viral load. So that's one example. Then there's many more. So, pata de vaca, pedro maca, which are commonly used in Brazil for diabetes, lowering blood sugar levels. This is, of course, a giant target as well. And the drug company break these plants down into 7 active constituents and run studies on each one, and none of them work. None of them work individually. So it goes back to the entourage or the synergy of that full plant extract, just like the indigenous people were using as a tea in this case, a hot water infusion, I believe, and it does work. So something else that does wonderful things for us, because we have access to this. Now, we can't say this is good for diabetes. We can't use the word diabetes. We can say this helps balance normal blood sugar levels and support a healthy pancreas. So the rainforest is full of these extraordinary items who have traditionally been used as the full plant extract, as taking advantage of that complex chemistry, the complex nutritional factors, the complex energetics that have developed for its life experience, that we're able to transfer that, integrate that into our physiology to get that same expression. And when you're doing the isolates, then oftentimes it doesn't work, or it becomes toxic, or the body simply doesn't understand isolate, and you end up with side effects. Help solve a lot of the degenerative issues that we're seeing in America. The rainforest is a giant treasure house of benefit that way, and we're not going to develop any type of drug isolate, which is a completely different mindset and a completely different track.
It's sad, you know, I've been studying the rainforest for years. One of my college professors was from down there, and he wrote a book, and it's just sad that they're clear cutting forest and forest and forest. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of change in life. You know, I like, you know, I think I've come from old school, but with you, do you go down there quite a bit still? Or I know you mentioned a garden, and so I know you have a ranch here in California, where you grow different type herbs, but also I believe grapes. You have a vineyard. With this organic garden, what other plants are you growing there? And do you still go back down to the Amazon?
Yes, I still go back down, and what we have right now is a plantation of camu camu. Camu camu grows in a floodplain, and about 30 years ago, I secured about 115 acres of land on the Urinacocha Lagoon that's in a floodplain. No one really seemed to want it because it's underwater for 4 months of the year. And for me, that was perfect, because that's where the camu camu is growing. And then in addition to what was growing there naturally, we planted a lot more. And the great thing about that is, you know, there's no fertilization, there's no soil amendments, there's no watering, there's none of that, because the rainforest kind of takes care of all that itself. When the rains come in the rainy season, it picks up all this biomass, its rich biomass in the soil, which is the result of hundreds of thousands of species of plants dropping their leaves and stems and trees falling over, all that being contributed, you know, concentrated energetic and chemistry being contributed to the forest floor. The rains come, pick up that biomass and move it to the floodplain. So we have the advantage of these camu camu trees of receiving the energetics and the chemistry and nutritional factors of 100,000 species of plants that come in there. And so the camu extracts that, you know, and concentrates it into its own specific profile of nutrients and beneficial chemistry. So the camu, we're doing that way. When you got to,
and what is camu used for?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, camu is it's a small tree or a very, very large bush, and it will yield a fruit about the size of a large grape. Uh-huh. It has a thin skin like a grape, very pulpy inside, big seeds like a grape. And that's the highest concentration of naturally occurring vitamin C of anything in the world. So that is very important for that aspect, but it also has a full profile of other polyphenols. It's got some erythritol in it and a variety of chemistry, beneficial chemistry that's very anti-inflammatory, biological terrain in the brain that facilitates the proper cycling of serotonin. So it's kind of a feel-good plant at the same time.
With the camu, is there a reason why, just because you had the property to purchase in the swamp area that I guess nobody else wanted, and you saw the benefits there of the camu plant, is there other plants that you grow down there, or are you just concentrating on the camu, and do you bring it back up here to the States? What are you doing with it?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we bring that material back. We bring it back by the ton. We dry the fruit in stainless steel dryers when it's harvest time. We'll take that, just dry it, grind that into a powder, and that's the presentation of that. It can be used in liquid extracts. It can be used in capsules. You know, any form like that. Most of the other botanicals, the Shankapiedra is harvested wild. It's a little fern type of a plant. I talked about it as being called the stonebreaker. And it just grows all over the sandy areas of the riverbank. So that's harvested wild. We engage a variety of indigenous groups to harvest other plants, the Sangre de Drago, that sap I was mentioning. And, yeah. And so all of those, and when we do that, that provides an income for them. And of course, in addition to that, you mentioned environmental implications. My original degree is in environmental studies, and this is something, you know, with this treasure house, preservation of this treasure house is so critical to a healthy future for mankind. You know, it produces the most oxygen in the world, and most people agree, hey, oxygen's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, the extraordinary medicinal value, which I believe can address every major degenerative issue that we're dealing with. So we support the indigenous communities. We help them get rights and title to their land. So we're getting titles to, over the years, probably a little over 200,000 acres that's titled to the indigenous people. And it's a funny process, because we say, here's an area of land. Here's like, you know, maybe 22,000 acres where these particular tribe have been living. Would like for them to have the title to that, and the government's first response is, what land? So we actually have to get surveying teams in there and survey it, and then say, this is what we're talking about. So then that starts the process, and then people that may want to object to that can object to that or not. Yeah. And it's a long multi-year process, but we've been quite successful.
Yeah.
In just communities lately.
You hear about a lot of these herbs, and I have, and this has been part of our lifestyle. Corinne and I, this, you know, we were big into different herbs as well. Is this common knowledge down there in the Amazon or even South America, or is this more so the indigenous people, the medicine people that have been using this for years down in the Amazon?
Both. It's spread over to, it's kind of a regional knowledge base, John. So where the Oña de Gato or Sangre de Drago grow and live, they've been used traditionally, and so that's spread into where settlers move into the area or information spreads. So regionally, people know about that. Shankapiedra, where that's growing, people have been accustomed to using that. Like Suma Maca from the highlands, you know, completely different geography, completely different region. those people know and use the maca,
Yeah.
but not the people in the jungle because it's not there. So you go all over South America, which is, the rainforest is a chunk of real estate, maybe half the size of the United States. And so it's a big chunk of real estate and, thousands of tributaries in there and a lot of different mini ecosystems within, the bigger rainforest ecosystem and different plant species in different areas. So it tends to be a regional knowledge. So that's the benefit now for the very first time in history that we're able to take plants that are known and have therapeutic value and that we've shown the formulas and the combinations to be synergistic for specific target. So we use ingredients from all over the Amazon for the first time, combining all those together. And then even more importantly, which is all about, technology and travel and communication, 100 years ago, you'd have to put all these things on a boat and it would be months and months to, and now, we're able to bring all this together and formulate it, have it in one place, and, you push a button and it's on the way to your house. I mean, my technology is quite extraordinary. And I don't think most of the population really understands the extraordinary value in that, to be able to have that and to have that so quickly to address what our issues are.
Yeah. I know you're here in California, and so you bring a lot of these I guess plant-based and herbs back up here to the States. Are you allowed to? Do you use them in your own house? And if so, what are the ones that you use and you've seen the most benefit with?
Yes, and yes.
Good.
So yes, I bring them back. Bring them back into Florida, which is I'm a permanent resident of Florida, and we have a little place in California. We like to get out here once in a while. And so we got a warehouse in Florida where a lot of this is stored, tons of that. Yes, it's allowed to bring back. It's become more, just more documentation is required. Now we have to have the permission of Homeland Security before it can actually leave Peru. And so we have to let them know what we're bringing in. So Homeland Security signs off of it. And then ultimately you've got, the customs, the agriculture, the DEA, of course, the FDA. And there's multiple agencies involved in authentication of proper genus and species of plant and checking for, total yeast counts and aerobic plate counts and Staphylococcus. So you do an entire certificate of analysis on each one to confirm, A, this is a species and genus of the plant that you say it is, and that it's free of any harmful issues, any insecticides, pesticides, and so yeah, it's an involved process, but yes, we still do that.
Because I know how strict that is. There's a lot of new plants taken over, like in Hawaii, actually. Some of the native plants are being overtaken by stuff that's been brought in from Asia, and really killing a lot of the I guess the indigenous plants that have been there. And we were just down in God, I've been traveling so much. I was down in Florida with filming our brain master class. And we talk about brain disorders and Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's. I've heard you speak before, and some of these plants or some of these herbs are beneficial for inflammation. Can you talk about that?
Sure can. Yeah, that's a really big issue. You're talking about the Alzheimer's, the dementia, inflammatory response, gigantic. When there's inflammatory biological terrain, that sets the stage for a whole lot of pathogenic processes to start that are not helpful for us. So we really want to address the inflammatory aspect of that. Alzheimer's and dementia are really big issues, and it's growing, and the rate of that's growing geometrically. And part of that is the population is growing. The older population is growing geometrically. Yeah. And there's not things that are properly addressing some of the causative factors of that. So if you look at some of the stats, you'll see like deaths due to heart disease over the last 10 years are actually down 11%. So that's really, really good. People are aware of things that they can really do to protect their hearts. Deaths due to Alzheimer's has increased 123%
Wow.
that same time period. So this is the one that we've really got to focus on and pay attention to. The Center of Disease Control has said if we can't get this under control, it has the potential to bankrupt the entire healthcare system. It's a heartbreaking thing, the dementia and Alzheimer's, not only for the person being affected, but it affects, you know, the entire family and the entire group of caregivers surrounding that. So it's very difficult, very heartbreaking, very emotionally taxing, very financially taxing. And so it's important that we get a good look at where we are right now and what are some of the causative factors that that are involved here. And is there anything that we can do to really facilitate having, you know, a healthy brain, healthy cognition, good social skills, without going into that age-related cognitive decline that's so common.
You know, that number 123%. I mean, that's crazy. And you know, it's sad because I've had a lot of friends that, you know, they're coming to the age where their parents are running into brain issues, dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. So is there anything that you brought up back up here that some beneficial herbs that you worked with, that you've seen has helped a lot of these brain health patients?
Yeah, actually, we're very, very fortunate. The rainforest, again, is really giving us compounds that can really help in a really big way here. And some of those would be, you know, if you look at the causative factors of this age-related mental decline, you have this amyloid plaquing that builds up. When you think of your neurons in your system in your brain, there's a signal, electrical signal that's sent from one neuron to another, and there's a little gap there in this synaptic cleft. And so if you think about the old internal combustion engines, or rather the old carburetors, where you would have to replace your spark plugs, and the spark plug, it gets kind of jammed and gunk in there, and then your engine's not running properly, so you have to pull the spark plugs out and put a new one in there. So we get this amyloid plaquing that builds up, and so then it interrupts that signal. So the signals aren't going to, you know, where your database, your stored memories are when you're trying to think of something. You're just not accessing that data again. So things that can break up that amyloid plaquing, tau tangles, which is a neuronal fibril tangle where these neurons get tangled in there instead of being structured in a more uniform and organized way, is an issue. The just inflammatory terrain that the brain is dealing with from either diet or toxins that we're taking in, where the brain will see that as an insult. And one of the brand new things that's coming along now is research on like fungus and yeast, in particular Candida. Candida is a yeast that's very common in most people because of our diet and because we've been accustomed to eating a lot of antibiotics, which take away the good microbials that would keep the yeast under control. When people do a course of antibiotics, oftentimes in a couple of weeks, they've got a yeast overgrowth. And sometimes so crazy that people will treat the yeast overgrowth with more antibiotics. and so then you get a microbial terrain in the gut that we see across the board. You know, people's guts are unhealthy and going in a lot of different directions. So keeping that yeast at bay with antifungals is really interesting, because now we see that Candida is not localized, it's actually systemic. It actually moves through the bloodstream as systemic. And what we've recently discovered, we thought that it stayed inside the bloodstream, but now it crosses the blood-brain barrier. This is an interesting discovery. And so then the brain will see that as an insult. And so then you get this amyloid plaquing to help protect the brain from this particular insult. So if we can stop in addition to the other things we can do with breaking up the amyloid plaquing, with creating a neurogenesis and building new brain cells, with slowing down the apoptosis of the old brain cells dying, we can actually create a less fungal terrain in our body with some antifungals. Then that's going to go a long way towards, proper brain health. So there's a whole variety of plants, some from the rainforest that have brain-derived neurotropic factors, which means like Uña de Gato, for example. We know Uña de Gato for its immune-building properties and its anti-inflammatory properties, but an extra bonus is it's a BDNF, or brain-derived neurotropic factor, meaning it facilitates the neurogenesis, or the building of new brain cells in the brain. And cacao, which is what you're getting chocolate from.
Yep.
Cacao has epigalactin, a certain kind of catechin that actually slows down the apoptosis, or the death of brain cells. So we slow down the death of brain cells and increase the new brain cells. We can actually create more brain matter. Our brains can actually grow pretty much at any age. This is pretty exciting. So it's not a matter of slowing some things down. It's a matter of actually reversing some of these issues that are causing these problems.
That's great. Let me back up on Candida. You can get Candida also by not taking pharmaceuticals, correct?
You can get Candida in a whole variety of ways.
Yeah.
Candida really feeds off sugar. And so people who have a high sugar diet or high, carbohydrate diet are much more prone to that. Yeah, Candida is just, people estimate like 1 out of 4 people are dealing with, Candida albicans overgrowth.
Gotcha. So, I love your information, by the way, too, and your knowledge. So you partnered with making a brain product with our friends over at Organics. I'm a big fan of organics, and I can share with you and our listeners, my thoughts about organics. Can you talk about this product, why you made it, why you formulated it, and how you guys came into coming up with this product line?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I love the organics products. I love the the consciousness around how their products are put together. And as a formulator for 34 years, as we see this Alzheimer's and dementia and what I call an age-related cognitive decline really becoming a major issue in the population, I always go straight to the rainforest and say, hey, what can we do? Are there treasures here? And so as I was talking to Organics, I said, yeah, let's get this product into the marketplace, something I was making here. And so this is something that we've come up with. And so it's interesting because we have, almost every botanical in this formula is anti-inflammatory. We talk about, how valuable having a non-inflammatory terrain in your body is to normal metabolic processes. And when you start getting inflammation, then that creates a terrain where a lot of pathogenic processes get going. So overall, downregulate the inflammatory issues that are going on in the body, and you're way ahead on many, many fronts already. Specifically, if we can build new brain cells and actually protect the brain cells that are there, obviously that's something that we want to do. And like the Uña de Gato, I just described as one of the brain-derived neurotropic factors, camu, creates that terrain in the brain where you're facilitating serotonin and proper neurotransmitter cycling. And then you get into Sangre de Drago, that's sap from the tree, so potently anti-inflammatory, but also rich sorts of proanthocyanins and polyphenols in the camu, and a high concentration of vitamin C, all of which have been shown to be really good for brain function. And 2 kind of secret elements, like they're so secret, it's things everyone has in their kitchen, like cinnamon and cacao. The cinnamon has a cinnamaldehyd, in there, which has been shown to help straighten out these tau tangles, which is one of the causative factors of brain decline. And there's interesting studies done with cinnamon and test scores, where they had kids either smell cinnamon or chew cinnamon gum before they took a test, and they actually had higher test scores.
That's good. Wow.
It's so underrated. Cinnamon and cacao both are so underrated. They increase the microcirculation, which you need in the brain. And so if you're breaking down the amyloid plaquings and the tau tangles and creating a proper state of inflammatory response and non-inflammatory terrain in the brain, then, and you're creating the new brain cells and slowing down the death of the old brain cells, and those neural pathways, where these tau tangles get messed up, that's what's controlling. I want to know, where's my car keys, right?
Yeah.
Boom, it goes, whoops, there's a block. I'm not accessing that data. I should know where my car keys are. So then you find them on the kitchen table, no big deal. It's when you start,
or in your hand.
Or in your hand, yes. When you start finding them in the refrigerator, you gotta double up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I don't even know if you know this, but I've been on it for a couple weeks, and my relationship with organics started about a year and a half ago. We did an interview with the founder and one of the doctors, and in the interview, and I said, tell you what, I'd love to try your products. Let me try it for 3 months. And if I see any benefits, I'll personally come back on and talk about it. So it was I tried them for 3 months, and it was last Halloween, October 31st, 2018, I received my blood work from our naturopath. Our current doctor is a naturopath. And so I'm a big fan of naturopaths because doctors will give you blood tests and you cover from A to Z, and naturopaths will cover A through double Z of what's going on in your body. And so I got my results back, and my doctor, who's been our doctor for about 10 years, said, John, I've never seen your blood work come back as awesome as it is. So this is a brand new product. What are you seeing so far?
Seeing in the response to the product is really
yeah. I mean, like I said, I just took it for 2 weeks. I'm a big fan of all their product lines. So I have been taking it 2 weeks. I just came back from a little vacation, so maybe that's why I'm more relaxed. So I don't know if I should give it this or the Montana air. But can you share about what I should look out for as well as our viewers?
Yeah, I think when you start taking this product, you have to recognize the power and the energetics of the botanicals we're dealing with. And they have a broad spectrum benefit. We talked about with inflammation, with supporting immune system, and with all these other areas. But then each one in there will have specific chemistry that also works in a very targeted way for these causative factors of this age-related cognitive decline. So when you start doing that and things start changing a little bit in your physiology, I make sure you want to give it, like you say, the 30, 60, 90 days is really best.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, this is not a quick fix. This is not, a caffeine product to jazz you up. This is not speed. We're talking about addressing the real issues at hand here. So as you go through that, you may not see anything in the first week or 2 or even 3, and then it's gonna, even though you'll be getting the other benefits from a brain standpoint, it's probably in, I'd say, week 4 or 5, you're gonna say, wow, there's just kind of a new clarity, a new, social confidence that comes when you have better recall with names and numbers and events, things like that. And, to be socially confident, because that's one of the things with the Alzheimer's and dementia, people just start dropping out of society. They're not remembering like they should. They don't feel comfortable in social situations anymore. And as all that comes back, it's just, everything here we're doing is just really designed to help people live their most full and robust life experience. So as that comes back, you can appreciate it and contribute the way you've always contributed.
Yeah, and I see your first ingredient is the Kamo extract.
Yeah. exactly.
Good.
Yes.
Does it help with eyesight?
You know what? That's one of the things. I've got three people that do straight camu just for their vision. It does. So you may find that, and there's a variety of things in there. Once you're increasing circulation,
Yeah.
you know, to the cerebral mass in the brain, then of course that's increasing circulation through the eyes and bringing nutrients there. The exact mechanisms of that I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's a comment we do get.
Is there anything else you want to add to for our listeners?
You know, there's something just because, right? This is the Sacred Plant Show,
Yes.
and we've talked so much about cannabis. And yeah, I do have a research cannabis grow just down the hill here for where I'm sitting with a variety of cultivars. And so one of the things we've seen in the research with cannabis, it's not in this formula, but there's with trace amounts of tetrahydrocannabinol, the THC, has actually been shown in the University of South Florida to be very good with Alzheimer's and dementia as well. It's not in this formula, but as a sacred plant audience, you know, there's another additional benefit, you know, with this formula we've just discussed, with a little bit of, you know, very minute dose of the THC.
Do you guys still go back and forth?
We do. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be going to Japan next week, and then we'll be back here for one day. In Spain for 3 weeks, and then we're back for a couple of weeks, and then it'll be time for Australia again.
Fantastic. What are you doing? I grew up in Japan. What are you doing over there?
In Kyoto, I've been invited to the Shimatsu Global Innovation Conference, and I'm actually submitted an abstract there for consideration on, and this is on methodologies of growing medicinal plants, specifically cannabis, so you get a higher expression of cannabinoids and terpene profiles.
Okay.
And it involves bacteria going into the soil. You know, the soil of the plant is like the microbiome to our gut, to our brain. It's the soil of the plant to the plant. So we want to facilitate having the proper microbials in the soil. That opens up the uptake of nutrients into the plant, and also create a harmonic field. And we use gemstones to create a harmonic field in the grow environment because these bacteria, these microbes, are communicating with each other. And in a harmonic field, the communication is more efficient. But we're seeing some pretty stunning results in the therapeutic value of plants grown in this environment as opposed to the control environment.
Thank you again, John. This is John Easterling, also more commonly known in the I guess your friends and outward is Amazon John. You know, so I thank you, grateful for you being here. I know our viewers are happy for you to be here. And thank you for sharing about the ageless brain. And because John's on here today talking about this and you're listening, you can click the link below, give you a 10% discount off the ageless brain. And look forward to seeing everyone and all of you again soon in our next Q&A. And we'll get John on and we'll do a live Q&A that you can ask John and myself questions on air, and we'll answer them on air. And hopefully we'll get you in between your travels, John, as well. So thank you, John. Best to you and your wife, health and happiness. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us here at the Sacred Plant, and we'll see you soon. Bless you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.